In Infosec and what you might expect from those particular roles or responsibilities, sharing my own career stories, some stories from colleagues of mine, hopefully to get some interaction from you all as well as we go through. But it's more of trying to figure out, I've had multiple people over my career come to me and ask, like, do I need to specialize? Can I stay more of a jack of all trades? Stuff like that. And that's what prompted this talk. And that's very loosely what this talk is going to be about. So I don't know if it'll take us the full 45 minutes. If not, that's fine. Y'all can get to lunch a little early, but we'll see. It all depends on how much interaction I get. As I said, the main goal of this talk is going to be covering at a high level some of the diversity in InfoSec, consulting, pen testing, things of that nature. What are some of the main broad areas that you might find people referring to? It's not going to cover all of them because there's way too many. There can be lots of nuances, but we'll cover what we can. Share, as I said, some of my personal stories, some of the challenges I had to overcome, things like that that you may have to encounter as well, or you have encountered. And then finally, hopefully, as I said, get some questions from you, get some input from you as it goes along. If there's anything you have a question about, anything you want to chime in on, at any point through here, feel free to speak up and raise your hand and I'll call on you. But don't feel as this is a very rigid talk. It's going to be more of just a interactive story as I'm going through. I'm happy to take questions as we're going through it, not a problem. All right, who is this talk for? The talk is really for anyone who is anyone in general, but more focused toward the people who are just getting into InfoSec, those who've been in it for a little while, anyone who's trying to get that feel of, as I said, can I be sort of that jack of all trades or jack of many trades? Or do I have to find that one thing like social engineering? That is my thing. I'm focusing all my energy on that and nothing else. Or can I be like, okay, I'll dabble on that. I'll dabble in this over here. I might be pretty good in this, but I'm still going to do some more stuff. It's helping you find that balance for yourself. That's who I'm looking for, is those kind of people who are looking for that answer or looking for direction down that path. One thing I will tell you right now is I'm not going to tell you the answer because it's different for everybody. Maybe you are that person who really wants to be that focus driven on that one subject, or you want to be a little more spread out. That's fine. It's up to you. But I'm trying to give you a little more information out there so you can make a better determination on that for yourself. All right. First, why should you listen to me? You shouldn't, but that's fine. You're in here, so too bad for you now. As I said, I am Adam Compton. I am a principal security consultant for TrustedSec. I've been in pen testing, consulting, code development, research for going on about 25 years now. That covers everything from private industry to federal government to international government to I've been across the board doing a little bit of everything in there. I've got a lot of experience doing like pen testing, but some with social engineering, some with research. So I feel I've touched my fingers into enough little buckets that I can give a little bit of an overview to what's going on out there. Plus, a lot of the descriptions in here I actually pulled from the other team members at TrustedSec. I'm like, hey, what would you think is really important for incident response? All right. So Tyler comes back to me. He's like, okay, here's what it is. I'm like, okay. So I'm actually cheating and pulling from them a lot of times, but that's fine. That's fine to know the people that you can get the answers from. That's fine as well. But as I said, I'm just a general person who doesn't mind getting up here, giving talks, sharing stories, looking the fool at times. So if it makes you smile, that's good. If it makes you think about something, that's even better. So what is the importance of choosing your career path? It can vary a lot on your enjoyment in your career, ultimately. If you're doing something that you enjoy, you might put a little more effort into it. If you're doing something because it makes you happy or you're good at it. You might put a little more effort into it. You'll want to learn more, and you'll have a sense of more satisfaction in your job. If, on the other hand, you're just after the paycheck, nothing wrong with that, really. But go for the job that you can do the best and pays the most. Just do that. If you're looking for that paycheck, nothing really wrong with that. That generally doesn't translate to lifelong career, but that's your decision to make. Generally, though, for myself, I like to promote more of the do what you're good at, what you're interested in, and then find an industry or a position that lets you expand upon that, to grow upon that, to build a place for yourself. Not necessarily saying at a particular company or what have you. Feel free to move companies, but it's the whole concept of this is the direction I want to go with my career. And keep in mind, that direction can change. I started out as a developer at one point. Then I moved into doing, focusing purely on like Linux and Unix-based systems, then more into social engineering. And so over my career of 25 years, I've shifted my focus multiple times in there. But at any given time, I had to plan, what do I want to be doing in 4 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road? 10 years might be a little far. Let's shift that to 1 year, to 4 years, to 5 years down the road. That's more realistic. And working toward that. But keep in mind, your circumstances, your path can change as you're going through. But having that rough outline helps you know where you want to focus your attention and your energy. So, as I said, there's too much in InfoSec, too much in consulting in general for me to cover everything. These are some of the high points, some of the major dividing points that I encounter in my day-to-day job, that I encounter in InfoSec, that I will be touching on. There will be other things out there, like I do pen testing primarily, but I have touched on the red teaming, done some incident response. I assist with the blue teaming occasionally, do research and development in my past, but there's other things out there like government compliance and regulations and implementation and stuff like that, code reviews. There's all kind of other criteria out there, other categories out there that I don't have enough experience with or aren't a big enough slice of the InfoSec pie, in my opinion, for me to really focus on right now. In your experience, it may be totally different, but from my experience, I'm talking on the ones I think are the most common for I see young people or people transitioning into to migrate into. So hopefully this lines up to some degree with what you're seeing, as what you're seeing ahead of you and what your career paths might take you down. We will be touching on each of these, going over some of the high points, some expectations, some possible requirements from the view of people in the industry as it is, and from team leads managing teams of people doing this that I know that I can pull questions from. We'll start with pen testing. I'm not going to read the slide directly. Feel free to do that, but I will be talking about it. What is pen testing? It's the most generalized term in InfoSec, I feel, because it can mean many different things to many different people. At its core, it's trying to find issues, vulnerabilities, exploits in a system or systems, and reporting on it. That's extremely vague, but there's not a lot. Trying to come up with a grand unified definition of pen testing is a little hard. Why? Because pen testing can cover anything from targeting individual systems, Unix, Windows, infrastructure devices, Cisco phones, Cisco Juniper switches, what have you. It can be doing social engineering, phone calls, emails, physical assessments, breaking into buildings. It can be doing web app assessments. It can be, what am I looking at? Oh, cloud infrastructure, targeting that, going after like AWS systems or entirely web-based, cloud-based infrastructures. Like I said, there's so much in pen testing that some people include, some people don't. Some don't include social engineering in there. But most of the times I go to consulting firms or talk with them, They include social engineering under the pen testing category, so I'm including it here. There's a lot that's in there. So if you're looking for that general, widest spectrum category you go into, pen testing as a general term would probably be that. Granted, it may change on whichever company or organization you're working for at the time. With that said, there are some commonalities among them, like what are some of the key things you need to be aware of how to do? Do some basic OSINT. That can be as easy as doing a couple Google searches, searching across social media for email addresses or names of employees who work at a company if you're going to be doing social engineering or going to be doing password guessing or username guessing later on. Being able to run a vulnerability scanner. Yes, as a pen tester, you will be running vulnerability scans. Is a vulnerability scan a pen test? No. Is it a tool that can assist with a pen test? Yes. I typically run a vulnerability scanner as part of a pen test. Why? Do you see how many checks are in some of these vulnerability scanners? Tens of, not hundreds of thousands of checks. This little brain of mine can't store every last one of those in there, so I will make use of the tools available to me. Vuln scanners can do that. But as with any tool, there are issues with it, and that's one thing that you need to know how to do is how to run tools, how to identify false positives in tools, how to configure tools appropriately, at least the tools that you're making use of. From a very different talk of mine, one of the key things you should learn is understand the tools you're using and don't run tools blindly. That can get you in lots of trouble and lots of issues. But that's a totally different story. I can bring that up later if need be. But so you need to learn how to do that. Using tools is great. Using automation tools is great if you understand what they're doing. That's what I'm saying. Don't run tools that you just don't flat out understand to begin with. If you understand the underlying thing and you're using a tool to help you speed it up, automate it, that's fine. Make use of it. Your time is precious. The customer's time is precious. Your company's time is precious. Use what you can to help things out. But be able to do manually as well, that helps out. And one of the main things that is left out of a lot of introductions to Infosec in general, and this is going to be common across all of these categories, is communication. You need to be able to communicate your findings, whether that's in a form of a report, that's in a presentation to the customer, if you're presenting to a customer or your own boss, being able to convey your technical findings in a human understandable way that the CEO of a company is going to be able to understand and have actionable results off of. That is a key thing to be able to key item to be able to do. Is it something you're expected to be able to do right off the bat? No, but it is something that you're going to learn as you go through the field. And the better you get at that, it opens up other possibilities down the way as well. Some essential skills. Be curious. You're going to notice this as I go through these slides. Some of this is common in multiple areas. Be curious. Be willing to go out there and do that research. Be willing to go out there and try out something new. Oh, I learned about, I don't know, some new exploit. The new, what was it? There was a new Cisco one that came out here recently. People on the team instantly are like, hey, I want to try to figure that out and see if I can replicate that. And so they start jumping in that and seeing what they can do. Or if you're coming into it from a different perspective, if you've never been in here or what have you, it's like, hey, you're going to be doing some mobile app testing right away. Or in the future, you're going to be doing some mobile app testing. You might want to go out and be willing to take that adventure. Go out and learn a little bit of how to target Android devices or something like that. That's fine. If you're not comfortable with it, try it once and tell your boss, I'm not wanting to do this anymore. I'm horrible at this and I feel better doing something else. Depending on who your boss is, they may say, okay, that's not a problem. Or they'll be like, too bad for you. This is what you're doing. And that's a whole nother discussion there as well. But having that curiosity and determination when needed, being able to work through the issues. You're trying to do some exploit and all of a sudden it fails. You're like, oh, well, that one's done. Move on to the next one. Well, maybe you just have the wrong parameters. Maybe you're using a password when you should be using a Kerberos ticket. Maybe, who knows? Have the determination to work your way through it. Using a line from a well-known security test, try harder. So it's one of those things, just have the determination to be able to work through the issues, or at least work to a point where you're like, okay, I exhausted all possibilities within reason. Now I'm going to move on. Have that sort of determination behind there. Be able to work with networking protocols, know what RFC 1918 at the minimum is. What is private address space? If you're looking at an IP, is that something that should be internet routable or not? What is a CIDR range? All this. What is CIDR notation? Understand this kind of stuff at some level. That's going to help you with pen testing, help you with systems, networks, when you're seeing traffic, when you're seeing that. Just understand some of these kind of things. But integrity is going to be a huge one. Don't lie on anything. Don't falsify results. Don't make up findings just because you're wanting to really show that customer up. If you looked at a previous report and you found a password on there for a domain admin and they haven't changed it yet, and you want to say, hey, I got domain admin on this network this year, if you have a reasonable way of how you could have obtained that without cheating and looking at a previous report, great. Just saying that, oh, I guessed it, and it's something like 24 characters long, yeah, you didn't guess that. If it's like password 123, yeah, you probably guessed that one. It's have that integrity, be able to stand behind what you're saying, and be accurate with it. As I said, don't just blindly say, oh, well, Nessus said that this is a finding, I'm putting it in there. Test it, validate it. It might very well be a false positive, or it might be something that's inconsequential. Don't just blindly put stuff in there. Do that. This is something that is going to come up a lot in the industry, is people tell you, you need to know programming. You don't need to know programming to do pen testing. Is it going to make your job easier at times? Absolutely. But you don't need to know it. There's probably going to be other people on your team who do know it and can help out. But if you have some basic scripting capabilities at the minimum, Bash scripting, Python scripting, if you can do C, C#, Java, whatever the case is, Rust, Ruby, great. It's going to help you automate some of the tasks, help you optimize your time, and help you get around some issues that you may be encountering with an exploit, with some testing, what have you. But is it necessary? No, you can get around it. I've known people doing this for years who have no capability in programming at all. But those who do have the capability find some of their tasks a lot easier. That's what I'm saying. It will make your job easier. Not having it doesn't mean you can't do your job, just means you're going to struggle a little more. You're going to have to find somebody to do that scripting for you. That's it. Or maybe you can use ChatGPT to write a quick script for you. That will work. I have done that, but it works like 2 out of 5 times. The other times I'm having to rely on my own knowledge on how to fix the code but that's a whole different thing. Certs. On any of these, I don't feel certs are required. Your particular company, your particular employer, what have you, may say it's required. But from my perspective and companies I've worked for, certs generally are not required. But again, it will give you that leg up. It will help you out down the line. And if nothing else, it helps indicate to your future employer, some other company, what have you, that you're willing to put in the time and effort to go through the learning process, to sit through that test and achieve this. It is an achievement award, if nothing else. But do you have to have that? No. Is it going to possibly give you a leg up over other applicants? Possibly. I know that when we see, if I'm looking at a new applicant for a consultant or a junior consultant, what have you, and they have OSCP or OSEP or something like that on there, I'm like, not bad. They sat through that. They did all that. That's great. They have the CSSP. That doesn't tell me a lot about them other than the fact that they're willing to sit through a 6-hour test. And if they're willing to do that, they're willing to do a lot of things. So good on them. And they do have a broad spectrum of base level knowledge. But not to knock any of the certifications, but some do hold a little more priority over others in job interview processes. But having them will help. Not having them isn't always going to be a bad thing. But Personally, right now, I have no certs under my title, and I've been doing this for 25 years, and I am a principal security consultant. So it can happen, partially also because I let many of mine expire over the years, but I haven't maintained them. So this is one area, pen testing, as I said. A more focused area that some people would classify under pen testing, but most of the time is separate, is considered red teaming, tiger teaming, targeted access operations, whatever you want to call it. It is generally considered more of a focused exploitation of a organization using any means necessary within reason to obtain the end goal as specified within the statement of work, while also helping to identify lapses or inefficiencies in their detection and monitoring capabilities and prevention. A lot of that saying is you're being a bad guy breaking in whatever way you can, hopefully not getting detected. It's glamorous, it's fun, that's what everybody wants to do, but at the same time, it has a lot more constraints on it than others at times. While it is generally considered a open-ended, open target, meaning under pen testing, you're usually I'm doing an internal pen test on these subnet ranges, or I'm targeting this web application, or I'm targeting 100 people for this social engineering. Red teaming is, I'm trying to get access to that database. That's it. Does that mean I have to break into their building, go in, tap some sort of small computer on their network that can call out, that I can get in and do it? Can I do social engineering to get their receptionist to give me access to some system? Do I break into a web app? Whatever it takes generally is considered within scope for you to be able to perform that. So it is open in that scenario, but you do have the overwhelming constraint of you try to A, not get detected, B, you're trying to do this without everybody on their team knowing you're going on, this is going on, so you may get blocked, you may get other responses to you, there might be other things going on there, and generally it takes a lot longer. That doesn't necessarily sound like a bad thing, but doing a pen test, you're usually doing a pen test in a week, 2 weeks. Most red teams I've encountered usually go on for weeks, maybe months, depending on the organization and what you're going after. You might sit there and spend all week to get one foothold, and then you spend like part of the next week getting a second foothold so you have redundancy. At that point, you might slowly start mapping out their internal network or mapping out something, trying things to stay under the threshold of any detection or intrusion detection or whatever they may have on their systems. It's going to be very slow, very meticulous. And if you're not of the mindset that you can tolerate that, you're really antsy, you want to get in there and do something really fast, this might not be for you. This is those people who are willing to sit there and just wait, run something, go off, get coffee, come back, run the next command, go home for the day, come back, run the next command. You might have to do that. It's going to be a very slow process at times, but it can be very rewarding when you do achieve your goal or you do help improve a customer. The rationale behind a company having this kind of testing done is something totally different that we're not covering right here. It's more of what it means to you as the person performing it. As far as some of the rows, it goes to communication primarily. Expectations. You have to manage the customer saying, hey, look, we're not going to be finding all your issues. We're going to be finding this attack chain of issues that gets us to that goal. There might be any number of branches off of that have other issues as well that we're not going to report on. Why? Because that isn't the goal of this type of assessment. That would be more of a pen test if you want that. Pen test is going to go in and try to find as many actionable issues as possible within a time frame. Red teaming, I'm trying to get to that goal. That's it. I might have multiple paths that I try, but ultimately that is my goal, not trying to find as many things as possible. So you have to manage the expectation with the customer, make sure they're getting what they expect, or explain to them why they're not. being able to present your information. It can be very high stress at times. Customers like, hey, why did somebody report somebody broke into our data center at 2 a.m. in Utah? Because we did, and this was in scope. And well, you have to have that de-escalation capability to talk the customer through it, talk them out of calling the FBI on you, things of that nature. You have to be able to communicate appropriately. And there's all kind of issues that can and have arisen doing red teams, or even pen tests for that matter. There's always things that can come up. Some of the basic skills. Here, coding is more of a requirement than it is in pen testing. Why? Because many of the times you're having to write your own exploits in these, because the exploits that are already out there have been patched or mitigated in some way by this organization. Because by the time they get to doing a red team exercise, they've went through many rounds of pen testing and other things, hopefully, so that they have all these things taken care of. And now the real test is, can they withstand a red team attack? So you're probably going to be having to write your own exploits or modify exploits to get them to work in this environment or what have you. So having coding capabilities is going to be much more of a requirement here than otherwise. Yes, you need to be familiar with pen testing. You need to be familiar a little bit with the blue teaming as to how configurations can help block it and how you can get around it. You need to have a little bit of broad knowledge here, but you still need to have that standard pen testing skills, as well as the curiosity, the determination, even more so than pen testing, to stick with it, to work your way through it. Integrity. This is the only one that I really had the team lead come back to me say this, but I believe it applies to all of them, is he called out humility in general. What he means there is, don't have an ego. Don't have an ego that's going to get between you and doing your job. An ego can be a killer when you're communicating with the customer. It's telling them, I'm the consultant, I'm right, you listen to me. Doesn't go over as well as, yes, I know that you have this in place and you spent millions of dollars for this product, but it hasn't been configured properly. Maybe you can take some of energy or some time to dedicate to help training your people on how to use your detection software, and you need to be able to work through this de-escalation, and or even at times when the customer comes back and says, well, yeah, that isn't a finding, or you did something wrong. You can't just go, well, you're ugly. You can't. You need to know how to talk to people, and having the ability to be humble and even take criticism, even if it's not deserved at all times, is part of being that consultant, being that person who's paid to do this job. But yes, you are going to encounter that criticism. You're going to encounter that hostility from the customer, from your boss, from whoever. It's going to happen in all these fields, but you may encounter it a little more here just because of how aggressive this can get at times and how adversarial. And of course, the popular certs are your OSCP, OSEP, your Certified Red Team Operator. There's any number of them. If you want to reach out to me after this talk, I can give you more of a complete list on any of these if you want that sort of a certification list. This was just a short list I put together for these slides. Incident response. This is, depending on who you talk to, can be part of blue teaming, can be its own thing, it can be an offshoot. Incident response is, okay, we got hacked. What can we do about it? Or, hey, I see someone logging into their computer at 2 a.m. from a Hong Kong IP address. Should that be something I should be concerned about? Most likely, yes, especially if you don't have offices in Hong Kong, or you don't have somebody vacationing there, or what have you. But it's that skill set to go in and say, okay, something is wrong, something's not as you expected. How can I go in and mitigate that? How can I go in and trace down what is going on, put together a timeline of events? You're being this, crime scene investigator, but for computers. You're having to go in and build that whole timeline out, figure out what's going on. If you're a fan of those procedural cop shows and you like doing Infosec, maybe this is the way you want to go, because you really do have to do that. I've seen some of the reports that come out of this, and it's really like, At 12:01 and 15 seconds, this was run. At 12:01 and 18 seconds, this file was created. I'm going, oh dear God, that is insane. But yeah, it goes on pages of this, trying to spell out exactly what happened so that you can trace back at any given time all the systems that were affected, all the information that was accessed, and how far it spread, and what you need to do to help contain, eradicate, and repair what happened and move on from there. Many times this information doesn't ever get shared outside the organization. That's why so many breaches are never reported, because people just don't want to let people know that they got breached and how bad it was. But it does get out at times. But as far as you doing the incident response, you have to be able to go through, have the dedication, have the time, have that Sherlock Holmes ability to piece together and make that leap of, well, if I was the attacker and I had this access, what would I have done next? So maybe I would have done this. It doesn't mean that you have to be a great red teamer or a great whatever attacker, but you have to know some of their techniques, the more common attack paths and stuff like that, and generally how those attack chains work, so that you can think like them as you're trying to piece together this attack chain of what they may have done. You need to be good at working with a team in particular, more so than standard pen testing. Standard pen testing, it's usually going to be one, maybe two people on the engagement. Red teaming, you may have 2, 3 people, depending, maybe more, depending on the engagement. Incident response, it's generally all hands on deck, because like, okay, the sooner we can get this resolved, the sooner we can get this identified, the better off. And being able to collaborate with teammates, be able to collaborate with not only your teammates, but the system administrators, the blue teamers, the operators, whoever it is, you need to be able to communicate and collaborate with everybody in order to get the greater picture here. So you are a mitigator. You're standing in mitigation while doing this at the same time. So it is very satisfying when they get it fixed. But I will tell you, they work some really weird hours, because most companies who have an IR team, they have many people on the team, and several of them are on call at any given time, because if you have a customer under contract and they call at like 3 a.m. and say, hey, we just got breached, you better have somebody on staff that's going to jump on that right away. So you may be working some real weird hours. But if that's the kind of thing that you like, great, and more power to you. This might be a path you want to go down, or it might be something that you want to entertain or assist with at times. Doesn't mean that you have to be part of that team, and we can touch on that later. As far as the certs go, I wasn't ever given a complete, a detailed list of like, oh, this is the cert that is like the go-to cert. It's like the SAN certs are good for incident response, for forensics. The CISA certs are good. Really, it's going to be more of how good are you at thinking on your feet? How good are you at understanding configuration and blue team concepts, as well as red team concepts, and then piecing the pieces together. It's more experience-based than some of the others, in my opinion. So here's one that is usually left out, but it comes in very handy, and this is why I also say that you don't always have to be a coder to do some of these, because a lot of organizations will have, it might just be one person, it might be a whole team of people doing research and development. And if this is what you're interested in, great for you. This is your responsibility, is to make sure that the red teamers, the blue teamers, any other team that you're working with has the tools available to them to do the job they need to do. It might be tailoring some exploit to work on a slightly different version than it currently is written for, or writing an entirely new command and control application, or migrating command and control application to be able to have a payload run off of a Lexus printer or a Lexmark printer or something like that, taking something and getting it to work in the environment that it's necessary. They tend to work more with the red teamers than anything, but at TrustedSec, we have a great research and development team, and while it appears they work primarily with the red team, the blue team, the pen test team, we all get collaboration from that as well. It gives us slightly modified tools that we can make use of that might not be as easily detected or blocked, things like that, that helps us out on engagements, custom exploits, things of that nature. New 0 days that have come out that don't have public exploits, they might help write those in-house for us to make use of, things of that nature. Proofs of concept, they really help you do your job. If you had the coding capability, you might be doing some of this on your own, but where they have the dedication, that's what they're dedicated to, they're working on that day in and day out. So they have more bandwidth on doing that. They're getting to see a wider range of activities, a wider range of types of attacks, working on more different types of infrastructure, more types of architecture. So if you really are that coder and you really want to do that coding, maybe this is the path you want to go down. I've known many people who went from something like pen testing, because that's how they got into the field, but were coders at heart, and then they moved over into like development or research. I've known people who were started out there and they're like, I really want to see how all my tools are being used, so they cross-train over into pen testing or red teaming so they can move over into that area as well. This is one thing I want to cover in general, is that once you, I've said it before, is once you pick that career path, you're not tied to it. It just gives you a direction that you want to be facing for now. If you get bored with that at some point, or it just really isn't doing it for you anymore, or the industry moved away from it, for example, maybe you're into like cloud testing or cloud applications or whatever, and next year it comes out that no one's going to be doing cloud anymore for whatever reason. It's not going to happen, but say that happened and you want to move somewhere else, that's fine. You're not tied to whatever you're doing right now. Yes, if it's what you want to do, fine, but if you want to cross-train, if you want to go somewhere else, many companies, organizations have the capability for you to shift in-house if it's available. And if you can't, feel free to look elsewhere. Part of a talk I give elsewhere is getting into Infosec and stuff like that too, is that don't feel like you're obligated to stay at a particular company. I think the stat is that if you're in IT, if you're not moving every 2 to 3 years on average, you're actually costing yourself tens of thousands of dollars in doing that. Because I know even for myself, I might get at previous companies, I've jumped around a few times in my own career. Might get like a 4 to 6% pay increase in the spring for the cost of living. And that's it for the year. I switched jobs, I got a $30,000 bonus, pay shift right there, because I shifted companies to a company that needed my capabilities, my talent at that time. They're willing to pay for it. My current employer didn't see the need for that. So don't feel bad about moving. This isn't your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents' timeline anymore. You're not having to be at a company for 50 years in order to get that pension. That isn't how the world is working right now. So you have your 401k, you have savings, you have whatever you have. Feel free to move companies if it's going to benefit you, your mental health, your finances, or your enjoyment in your career. I got off track a little bit there. I apologize for that, but that is just general recommendation for careers in general. Research and development, be able to think critically, have a wide range of programming capabilities, be willing to learn other architectures, whether it's phones, whether it's printers, whether it's smoke alarms. Yes, we've had implants put on smoke alarms, stuff like that. It's weird. You can do it. If you can flash an EEPROM, you can put an implant on it. It's weird. So yeah, just that kind of things. Be able to work with teams, all your coding stuff. Here would be the last one in all this, and that's blue teaming or defensive skills. Did I jump one there? Oh yeah, I did jump one. Defensive security and blue teaming. They're the defenders. They're the people who are on the other side of the computers and networks from the red teamers, generally speaking, or from the real adversaries and real world events. Your job there is to, one, make sure that everything's configured and locked down so nothing can happen to it. And then assuming something does happen to it, how you need to know how to respond to that, how to fix it, how to upgrade it, how to patch it. When it's necessary to call in incident response, work with incident response to provide them the logs and assist them about that. Many times they are the incident response, unfortunately. A lot of organizations don't have the money for incident response and blue team, so they kind of get merged together. Much like red teaming and pen testing get merged together at times, blue teaming and incident response can get merged together at times. So, and the names may shift on organization, company, and all that, but the general concept is still there. You're basically a blue teamer is the person who is sitting there watching the network. You are the guard dog. You are the human version of all those security precautions that the company wanted to put on that network. You're the one who's going to be monitoring that. You're going to be the one who's maintaining that. So that $1 million piece of hardware that your company just bought and didn't give you any training budget on how to use it, well, it's up to you to figure out how to use it and learn how to do it efficiently before bad guys figure out that you haven't configured it and bypass it. So there's a lot that can go in here, and this is honestly one of the least funded parts that I see in organizations as a whole, because it usually ends up being one person doing system admin for the entire network, for the entire organization, and they're having to do this, and they're having to do other stuff, and they're having to take help desk calls. And I'm like, there's definitely a need for this out there. And I think there's more of a need for this than there is pen testers. Pen testers, we get to bounce around companies and go, hey, I'm hacking you today. Hey, I'm hacking you next week. These people are there day in, day out, every day for their organization going, oh, who's attacking us today? Let's block that. So you have this ongoing task, but you do get the benefit, if you want to call that, of knowing your network better than the bad guys, hopefully, and you can help protect it and all that. But this is more of those people who like to defend more than attack. But that's not to say that you don't need to know how to attack. Some of the best blue teamers I know were system administrators. They were red teamers, pen testers, because they know the attacks that the bad guys are going to be using. So they know at least some degree how to prevent against that. Some of the skills, being able to do packet analysis, know the internals of operating systems, things like that. Being able to do some incident response as necessary. Quickly get through the rest of this. We're almost out of time. No real need to go into my journey, but I started out, I got a computer, became a co-op for the Department of Defense. So I started out early on with that. Got my master's degree. Went on into doing pen testing as an accident. This is back when I was with the Department of Defense. When I graduated, I got an offer from them to become full-time after my internship. They're like, great. I'm like, that's the office I want to go to. They said, no problem. I show up. They're like, that office got reorged out of existence. It doesn't exist anymore. Find a new office. So I had 2 weeks. I'm sitting there in the new employee office, whatever, and I interviewed around, and the first office that responded to me in a favorable manner, and I liked what they were saying, was their version of a pen test team. So I'm like, I come from a system administrator and a programmer background. I don't know what I'm doing, but I luckily had some great team members who sat me down and said, okay, you're going to shadow me for a while, and then you're going to go on some with us in tandem, then you're going to start leading, and they worked me through the process and brought me up to speed. This is different than probably everybody else in this room, my journey, and that's fine, because everybody's journey is going to be different. There might be some commonalities among some people, especially if you went to school together or what have you, or you were all in the Marines together or whatever. You might have some commonalities, but no two people have I ever met that had the same career path into Infosec, especially once you got into Infosec, but even to get there. I've known people who were chemical engineers who got tired of it and one day said, I want to go into Infosec. I'm like, that's good for you. I don't see the correlation there, but hey, more power to you. And then jobs many times, and now I'm at Trusted Sec. Been here for a little over 5 years and loving it still. So some of the challenges you might have to overcome. Infosec is ever changing. AI, all your machine learning, all that's up and coming now. That's going to become part of it. It might be a new area that you might want to focus in on. Whether I diversify or focus my skill set, that's totally up to you. People usually think of it as broad knowledge or deep knowledge. I like to think of it as what I try to do is a triangle. I have a broad knowledge on some level of knowledge on a lot of things, but there's one or two areas that I have a decent amount of knowledge. So it's sort of you get this weird like inverted triangle is the way I picture it in my head. It doesn't have to be the way you picture it, but it's okay to have deep knowledge in a couple areas or broad knowledge in all areas. It's totally fine. I know some people who are amazing at one area, and that's what they've made their career out of, and they are subject matter experts on that, and that's great for them. That's not for me. I like to have that broad knowledge on a lot of areas, but I tend to focus primarily on just standard pen testing, and that works for me. That doesn't have to work for you, but that's just generally how I see it. If you're trying to get into a job, look at the job descriptions. What are they looking for? What does it call for? Look at the company in general. Try to piece together if you think that's going to be a good position for you. But ultimately, the last line on here is probably one that I learned too late in my career that I wish people would learn earlier on. Learn balance. You don't have to. Yes, you're young, getting into the Infosec, whatever. You think that you have to be that golden star. You have to be that amazing person. You have to work those 60 hours a week, those 80 hours a week. You have to prove your worth. No, you will burn out. You will burn out quickly, and then you will get disgruntled, and then you'll end up like me way earlier than I did. No, I'm kidding. But I did burn out at one point and came back and all that. That's fine. It can happen, and it does happen. But the sooner you can learn that what people call the work-life balance is great. Even if your separation is, okay, in my downtime, I want to have a hobby. That's fine. Even if that hobby is I want to do Hack the Box, I want to do CTFs, that's fine. If it helps you relax and not think about pleasing that customer, pleasing your boss or whatever, if it's something that helps you to relax and unwind, learn to do that. A lot of people, that's woodworking, that's exercising, that's smoking that perfect brisket. Whatever it is for you, find something that you can separate your brain from work and do something else. Even if it's work related, that's fine. If you can manage that delicate balance, that's fine, but find that balance somewhere in there. It's going to prolong your life in Infosec. Life lessons, stay open to possibilities. One of the jobs I got is just because I ran into somebody I knew at Vegas one time that I knew from like a previous job, like 2 jobs ago. And they're like, hey, are you still doing XYZ? I'm like, yes. They're like, hey, you want to have breakfast? I'm like, fine. Then we met and I got a new job out of that. So watch out for burnout. As I said, it is a real thing. It happens to a lot of people, way more than people want to admit. It does happen out there. You lose enthusiasm, you lose that drive, you lose that forward momentum, and you start to despise your job. That is not a good position for anybody to be in. There's whole talks, whole lectures, whole books written on this. If you're interested in that, let me know, and I can point you in a good direction on where to learn about it, how to, books that are much more, and people that are much more knowledgeable on it than I am, I can help you with that. But burnout is a serious thing. Watch out for it. And the last one here helps address one of the other main items, which is imposter syndrome. If you don't have it yet, you will at some point. Everybody seems to, whether they want to admit it or not. That's more common than you would think. But and that is hey, I see my coworkers doing these great things, and I'm struggling at it. No, they're struggling at it too, or they struggled at it last year until they learned it, and now they don't have to. It's part of the learning experience. No one is good at everything. And if you are, please come see me. I want you to work with me. But the odds are no one is good at everything. You're going to try things that you're not good at. You're going to try things that you struggle at. You're going to try things that you see other people do easily or you think are doing easily that you think you're having a hard time with. That is fine. You don't have to compare to anyone else. Compare to yourself. Promote yourself. Be an advocate for yourself. If you want to have somebody else help you out, that's fine. If you see somebody who does seem to be able to do something easier than you, instead of saying, wow, I wish I could, I don't think I'm as good as them. No, you reach out to them and say, hey, do you mind helping me on this? Do you mind helping tutor me, maybe mentor me, what have you? Use that as an opportunity to try to learn and grow on it if you want to. That goes into networking, mentorship. Come to conferences, go to your university, talk to coworkers, talk to people wherever. you see somebody giving a talk on something or writing a piece of code to do something that you're interested in, reach out to them. Hey, I'm Adam. How are you? I'm new to Infosec, or I'm thinking of getting into that area, or I didn't know anything about Active Directory certificate services exploits. I want to know more about that. You seem to know a lot about that. Can you point me in a direction? You'd be amazed at how often people in this industry are willing to help you out. Yes, you might see people who are really gruff and serious and all that. No, more times than not, you're going to have a beneficial interaction with them. Yes, there are those people out there that are jerks. I can't account for them. If somebody gives you a cold shoulder or blows you off, say, not a problem. You move on to someone else. Don't waste your time and energy on someone who doesn't want to help you. Move on. But I have learned so much through the people I've met and the people who have helped me than I've learned on my own, because they helped guide me in the direction that I ended up being beneficial to me overall. Identify what you're good at, what you're passionate about. That will help guide where you might do good in your career. Just kind of get through this quickly. If you're looking for ways to improve yourself, go out to blogs, Discord servers, webinars, conferences, meet and greet. Do some of your own. Write your own blog. Get it out there. Slightly different, but if you want an answer to something, I've heard the best way to do it is post it on Discord, on a chat channel, the wrong answer, and somebody will correct you. I don't know how accurate that is, but I feel there's more truth to that than I want to believe. But go to trainings. There's lots of free trainings out there, lots of free online courses, but there are also some free courses or discounted courses, especially at conferences that you're going to attend. That's other ways you can grow. Set realistic and achievable goals for yourself. To say that I'm going to become the subject matter expert in Windows 11 this year probably isn't going to be a realistic one or achievable one. It may be for you, but saying, oh, I want to set up a functioning Windows lab on my home servers this year so that I can test out some exploits. That is realistic. It's a little open-ended, but it gives you that basic framework that you can build upon. I want to learn Python this year. Well, I want to learn Python to help me automate some common penetration testing tasks. That is more targeted and more achievable, and it's a goal-oriented. Depends on what works for you, if you want to be more open-ended or more targeted, but set realistic goals. Small increments are better than huge increments because you can work on those easier. Summary, many career paths, no one's is the same. Pick what you're good at, what you're interested in, use that as a starting point, move on from there. Don't feel that ties you down permanently. Finally, you can reach out to me at any of those. Thank you. It is a little bit afternoon. I apologize, went a few minutes over here, but thank you very much for stopping out. I'll be around for the next hour or two. Feel free to run up to me, talk to me, ask me questions, whatever works for you. And thank you all for coming out.